Members, we have reached the appointed time and a quorum has been formed. So may I wish you a very good new year, a prosperous and healthy one as well. And I also hope that this committee would conduct its business smoothly. We have 2 sessions today. Actually, we have only got 4 items. We don't need to use up all the time for the 2 sessions. After this session, I would have a break of 15 minutes, and then we'll start at 5:20 again. Members, please refer to Rule 83 of our Rules of Procedure. If you have any interest to declare, please do so before you speak. And also, please refer to Rule 84 that in respect of direct pecuniary interest, there are certain requirements that you have to meet. Item number 1, FCR 2014-1551. Members are invited to approve the proposals endorsed by the PWSC, endorsed on the 26th of November, the 23rd of January, 30th of January, the 4th of February, and the 10th of February. No members have proposed that we should vote on individual items in this paper. If there are no questions raised, and I put the question to you, with those in favor of FCR 2014-1551, please raise your hands. Those object, please raise your hands. I think the majority of members are in favor of this item. This item is approved. Next, FCR 2014-1545A. Members are invited to approve an increase in the approved commitment of the Fisheries Development Fund under subhead 101 from 290 million by 810 million to 1.1 billion for meeting the increased demand for credit facilities from the fisheries trade, in particular fishermen who have been affected by the trawl ban, and B, the setting aside of about $400 million in the loan capital for providing loans to inshore trawlers on the proviso that such loan applications must be submitted on or before the 30th of June 2015. This is just like the previous paper. Only the date has been changed, and then the deadline is now 30th of June 2015, so as to allow more time for fishermen to submit their applications. In terms of the contents, the paper is the same as the one that we had spent 8 hours on. For this item, we have Professor Sophie Chan, Undersecretary for Food and Health, Mr. Christopher Wong Kwok Ban, Deputy Secretary, Mr. Mikey Lai, Assistant Director of AFC, and Mr. Chen Kim Hong, Senior Fishery Officer, AFCD. Any questions from members? If members have no question to raise, I will now put this item to a vote. With those in favor of FCR 2014-1545A, please raise your hands. Those against, please raise your hands. I think the majority of members present are in favor of this item. This item is endorsed. Item 3. What about our representative for the fisheries industry? Is he on leave or is he out on the sea? I just want to kill some time for the officials to be seated. Well, if you protest, I'll shut up. I hope you do the same in the future. I want to seat the officials first. It's for a good reason. Item 3, FCR 2014-1558, recommendation of the Public Works Committee met on the 9th of January 2015. And that is PWSC 2014-36. And there is a road improvement works for West Kowloon Reclamation Development Phase 1, i.e. the upgrading of 5 ITH to Category A, and an estimated cost of $845.8 million in money of the day prices. Some members have asked that this item be voted on separately in our FC meeting. For this item, we have Mr. Yao Sing Mo from Transport and Housing Bureau, Ms. Judy Zheng, Principal Assistant Secretary for T&H, Mr. Jimmy Chan, Project Manager, Highways Department, Mr. Leung Tak-fai, Chief Engineer from Transport Department. Does any member wish to speak? Well, if the members have no questions to raise, I'll now put this item to the vote. Will those in favor of FCR 2014-15, 58, please raise your hands. Those against, please raise your hands. I think the majority of members present are in support of this item. This item is endorsed. FCR 2014-15, 57. Members are invited to inject $5 billion into the Innovation and Technology Fund. On the 20th of January, the ITB panel of this council was consulted to answer members' questions. We have the following officials in attendance. Ms. Janet Wong, Commissioner for Innovation and Technology, Ms. Joanne Wong, Deputy Commissioner, Mr. Frank Zhang, Assistant Commissioner, and Professor Yuan Ching, Science Advisor. We will now invite Mr. Wong Ting Kwong to brief us on the deliberation of the panel. Thank you. The panel supports the administration's proposal to inject $5 billion into Innovation and Technology Fund, and also to incorporate the R&D cash rebate program into the fund so as to provide long-term and comprehensive support for innovation and technology development. The panel reminded the government to effectively use the provisions in the funds and also to promote the commercial application of the results of the R&D activities supported by the fund. Some members think that there should be more funding support for private organizations and also to expand the scope of internal research projects undertaken by the fund. On the commercial application of R&D, some members think that we should concentrate on projects that can be commercially applied in Hong Kong, and manufacturing activities can be promoted so as to benefit the economy of Hong Kong. Some members expect that through the sponsorship of the fund, universities will be encouraged to promote entrepreneurship and also to turn the IP, the projects of universities into commercial applications. Some members propose that the government should publicize widely successful cases of commercial applications of local R&D so as to promote an innovation and a creative culture and to attract more local graduates to embark on a lifelong career in the field of R&D. Ms. Emily Lau. Chairman, you can see that for items supported by members, they can be passed so efficiently. So I hope the government would have a wider discussion with members to reach a consensus so as to ensure smooth progress. And what is going to happen after this meeting, is not related to our business. There are a few receptions. I'm just inviting you. I dare not invite others. I've been asked this question: why do I always adopt such a softy approach towards Miss Wong? Well, because I think she's a good civil servant. Actually, I've asked this question many times. Can the government take the lead in doing something? According to the commissioner, there's so much red tape, it's very difficult. Now we have ample time. May I invite the commissioner to say something? Is there any room for this? Because if the government takes the lead, I think we are going to see much better prospects. Well, it's much easier now, as a matter of fact, under the fifth review, after it's in operation for 15 years. We have reviewed the rules, especially in respect of government's role, from R&D to pilot application, and the production of samples or the building of the prototype. All of these can be sponsored and funded by the ITF. In the past, if you have to set up a platform, then at least 10% of the funding should come from the industrial sector. So the government cannot decide whether something should be promoted. Now, as long as the government or a public body, for example, the airport authority, is interested in a particular project, so we can fund the entire project. In the past, we've had difficulties because we could not bypass the procurement rights and support certain R&D. But now everything can be funded by the ITF. There are many successful examples working together with the CIC, the Airport Authority, and the Hong Kong Customs and Excise Department. There are more than 70 partnership projects. I believe in the future you will be able to see more cases of application of the R&D that we have carried out. So now the ITF can meet all the expenditure. What about the past? We're talking about something that do not have immediate market value, so some corporations will not be willing to pay half of the cost in order to get the IP rights. In other words, if this is a platform, we must get two companies to pay for 10% of the cost of the project before you can start it. And then you can apply the R&D results, say in our customs checkpoints. In other words, the corporations do not have to pay anything. That's not very good because we do want to have their participation. In the past, there was many rules to follow. I'm talking about R&D by our universities and our local R&D organizations. Well, if it's the internal R&D of these corporations, that would be okay. But if it's a R&D center run by our universities, then the fund can meet all the costs. But we are not talking about internal R&D of corporations. I hope you can provide all the necessary facilitation and streamlined procedure. I hope you would be able to come back to tell us more about the successful cases. The 5 centers will be covered in a film that we are shooting. That will be the subject of presentation in May. Mr. Alan Leung, yes, the Civic Party appreciate the work of the IT Commission, but I don't think I would favor try to be very soft on the Commissioner, like the Democratic Party has done. I have a few questions for the Commissioner. I've heard that our universities are actually contributing to the success of other parties. For example, they may have put up an application to the ITF, and they have set up a team of, say, 10 members in the research team. Because it would take a long time for the ITF to approve funding, and when it comes to commercial application of their R&D, there are many difficulties. If you say that this is for commercial application, then ITF cannot pay the cost. And then the research team will have to seek alternative funding source. And then all of a sudden, Singapore would just recruit the entire team to work for them. We are now going to inject $5 billion, Commissioner, so I hope that in terms of value for money, in terms of getting results, it will be, I hope it will be better. So can you introduce some flexible arrangements to bridge the gap between R&D and commercial application, so that we won't be doing this to benefit other parties? I know the R&D centers and universities and local designated organizations are quarter priorities. But for SMEs, because the threshold required is very high, they have no or little access to the ITF. Can you make some improvements so that SMEs or companies or ordinary companies can have easier access? Commissioner, first, whether our universities will be contributing towards the success of other countries or other parties. Well, in the past, the scope of funding support was very narrow, and it did not cover commercial application. Usually, the funding would stop after the report was compiled. And we have been extending this, so that it's now support for all the stages close to commercial applications where make a lot of changes. For example, if something has already been done out of Hong Kong, then we do not require the R&D to be done again. We authorize the purchase of the IP rights and take it up from there. But we haven't been able to cover marketing. Well, we've been asked whether we would consider doing this. When we came to this council, we made it very clear that the IT fund would be for R&D. So with regard to commercial application of R&D by universities, the flexibility would benefit our universities. As for the technology transfer, we have given our universities additionally $4 million. So I hope that the R&D will benefit Hong Kong. In CUHK, there's a prominent professor who invented this test of embryonic fruit. And now this item has been granted approval by the CUHK, and a company has been set up in the Science Park. This is most encouraging because the university has approved the commercial application. Turning to difficulties faced by SMEs, we used to have a special scheme for SMEs. It's on a 50-50 matching basis. We are going to launch a better scheme for SMEs. The cap of $6 million will go up to $10 million. And in the past, when the supported SMEs make a profit, then we will have to recoup something. And the SME complained that while we give them funding support, we expect to get something back. In the future, it will be provided as a grant.
And during a discussion in a panel, members expressed concern that SMEs can't wait for too long, and we have set up a special team. If the amount involved is no more than 2.8 million, we will process it in one go to shorten the time required. Next, Mr. Yu Si-wing. Well, about the marriage of technology and commercial opportunities. Well, there is a huge market on the mainland, and very often some enterprises, they make use of technology without the help and resources from the government, and they are successful. Say, for example, Alibaba. Compared to mainland enterprises, well, in Hong Kong, we are a small market, and we do need the internet as a platform. Some of the projects are not fully developed because it's not sustainable. When it comes to commercialization, there is a chance that Hong Kong products will shrink in South Asian market and the mainland market. So you have to think about commercialization, especially when it comes to the service industry. If we don't consider service industry support, we will lag behind. So will the government study under the ITF upgrading of our service industry? There are a lot of examples we can draw reference from, say, for example, the mainland. Would you consider that? That is to enhance our service industry. Of course, it would be better if our service industry is better than other South Asian country or the mainland. I've also spoken to the OGCIO, and they are happy to provide support, but when it comes to the tourism industry, they are not as willing. So, support to SMEs under the ITF to the service industry, including tourism, will you consider that? Can there be some kind of cooperation? Ms. Wong. In the past year, a lot of people have spoken to us that when it comes to e-commerce and financial services, there is a huge demand. So one of our key areas will be technology support in the service industry. In March, we have invited a lot of people from the government, from the commercial sector, and from the academics for a seminar. We'll also organize visits and We would like to provide better support for the service industry, and I will defer to Dr. Yun about our support to the retail industry. Professor Yu. There is an R&D center called LSCM. They use RFID for tracking. And there are a lot of development of software being used in different retailers to track the volume of sale. And there is big data analytics. Analysis will be conducted on the past transaction history and preference of customers. There are ongoing projects. We also encourage LSCM and S3 to make better use of these applications to benefit our retail industry. Maybe you will continue in the second round. Mr. Wong Kok Heng. Thank you. I speak in support of this item. The number of people in the IT sector has increased from about 11,000 to 26,000. Our productivity needs to be further enhanced and upgraded, and this needs information and technology support. Well, before this item, we speedily endorsed 3 items of 10 projects. This shows that if we are all rational and if we do not get personal, then we can very efficiently deal with the items on the agenda. And a member said that she would like the government to talk more to legislators, and I frankly speaking think that there has been constant communication. It's not the case that when items are endorsed there was good communication and vice versa. This is wrong, and it's not based on facts. I have to tell the truth. So I would like the council to come to its senses, especially Pan-Democrats, so that we can efficiently deal with the backlog of the Finance Committee. And we should not get personal. Well, you shouldn't say that if you support the item is because you have got a soft spot on the commissioner, and if you don't support it because you don't like CY Leung. The Policy Address 2015 also mentioned about the injection of $5 billion into the ITF. Policies are heavily related to livelihood. So we should treat the matter as it is and don't get personal. We should be rational. We have a discussion and then we vote on it so that we can maintain our efficiency. I don't need a reply. Next, Mr. Lo Wai Kok. The injection of $5 billion into the ITF is supported by the BPL. At the beginning, when this government came into office, it proposed an injection of $50 billion into the ITF, and because of generation of interest, there's altogether about $8 billion. And I don't know whether it's a good thing or bad. Of course, we are happy that we have more money to spend on innovation technology, but the amount is much smaller than that's spent by other countries. Well, from year 2001, there was only 7 billion, 2013, 15 billion, an increase of about 7%. But the amount of resources we put into this sector is a lot smaller than other countries. When it comes to expenditure on IT, it's only about 0.7% of GDP. And on the mainland, it's 2%. And there are competitors that spend more. We hope that the $5 billion injected will be spent as quickly as possible. We also need commitment from society as well. Over the years, whether it's the professional associations, chambers of commerce, they've been saying that there should be a tax concession or tax refund of about 200 to 300 times of the amount spent on R&D. Well, it's not mentioned in the budget, and we're quite disappointed about it. There is another matter is in some way related. Youngsters and entrepreneurship. There is the $300 million of a youth development fund, but it's not mentioned in the budget. Perhaps the secretary can give us more information, because the fund itself is a good thing, but it's not related. Yes, that's why I said it's in some way related. If you do not allow me to get an answer, then I will ask the question some other time. And about speeding up resources put into the R&D, well, I would like to get some answers, Commissioner. The $5 billion will be depleted in about 5 to 6 years. It's a lot quicker than about a decade ago. Every year we spend about $700 million. But with the enterprise support schemes, if it's well received, I believe that it will take shorter time to spend it all. And on the current estimate, it's about 5 to 6 years. Well, I hope this is good news to people in the innovation and technology sector. Dr. Fernando Zhang. We think that the amount spent on R&D is too low. We can put in more resources. We have a pool of talent, but very often the constraints of bureaucracy and other constraints stifle the development. We have to put money into it, but we have to make sure that it's properly used. So I find it bizarre that the loyalists like Wong Kok Heng said we've asked too many questions. I don't understand why asking question is irrational. I don't understand that if we rubber stamp all the items in the FC, it's rational. We have reasons, justifications, and grounds. Please refer to audit report number 60 that is released in October 2013 about funds, about the governance and project management. Please do your homework. We have a duty to see if the money under the fund is used properly. The report from the Audit Commission revealed a lot of problems. And, well, I have asked a lot of questions when the report covered the Innovation Technology Department. Having said that, I still think that we need to put in more investment in innovation and technology, but we have to improve on management and governance. Say, for example, reviews that have taken too long. And the report said that the fund's been running for over 10 years and there was no comprehensive review. It's only after the report that the government conducted the review, and we welcome that. And the report also reviewed problems with the governance. Say, for example, the review criteria, the Audit Commission found that the 5 R&D centers did not stick to the criteria. Say, for example, technology breakthrough, commercialization. And a lot of these items have not gone through that process, but you said that they are successful. And we're not talking about basic research and development. That the funding will come from RGC. We're talking about projects that are close to the commercialization stage. The technology can be transferred to the market. You set criteria, but you don't stick to that. So expectations, what turns out, it falls seriously short of expectations. So if you're going to criticize us, do your homework first. Don't accuse us of being irrational when we ask questions. Now, let me give you a chance. You finished with the review and published the report, and it covered the problems identified. Now you ask us for $5 billion. What are you going to do when it comes to time it takes, the ratio between administrative cost and R&D, and all the other areas? I thank Dr. Zhang for his questions. The fund's been in place for over 10 years, and we welcome the detailed report of the Audit Commission. A number of issues have been identified, and we have been following them up. And we reported to the Audit Commission and the relevant committee. The governance is an important area because we're talking about a large sum of fund, large amount of fund. So we have made clear the rules and to make sure that the applicants will meet these, will fulfill these criteria before they get to make sure that public money is properly used. Mr. Wong. First of all, about the R&D centers and the high ratio of administrative fees vis-a-vis R&D cost. We have looked into it, and when we exchanged information with the Audit Commission, we told them that these R&D centers incur administrative cost when supporting the project, and there is also other areas say, for example, promotional activities, organization of seminars, discussions with other R&D centers or personnel. All the costs incurred are counted towards the center's administration cost by the Audit Commission. But according to our calculation, the administration costs of these centers are reasonable. But we understand that when we can streamline the administration procedure. We've asked the R&D centers to follow that up.
Just now, Mr. Zhang mentioned the audit report and its comments on the R&D centers. When they were established in 2006, it was expected that within 3 years' time they would become self-sufficient. Lately, we have conducted our audits and we discover that the R&D centers cannot be self-sufficient within this period of time because the commercialization of the R&D results is not that simple. So the income cannot totally rely on the commercialization of R&D results. In last November, the ITF conducted a detailed study, and we have also reported to the LegCo. We said that in the medium term, the targets would be 20%. Next, Mr. Ray Chen, 5 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. When we talked about the establishment of the Innovation and Technology Bureau, I've also said this. That is, we are facing a problem. The R&D results cannot be well used right now. That is about commercialization. Now, they've made such great efforts to carry out research, and then they come up with a result. However, the government does not know how to use the results. I cited an example last time. I have visited one of their sites. They used small fish to test whether heavy metal exists in a solution, and if the fish becomes fluorescent, that means that's heavy metal. But the government hasn't used that result. The cosmetics companies are using that. In the past, the government's procurement policy imposed a lot of restrictions. Now, if the public sector has such a need, it can cooperate with the research centers, and then the results can be used. However, if it's not a tailor-made program, I mean, it's just a general R&D project, the results can be used by both the public and private sector. Can the government make more use of the R&D results? This is my number one concern. And my second concern is about the fairness and justice of using the funds. Now you are injecting $5 billion into the ITF. We are worried about the transparency. We understand that the sons or children of some of our senior officials are very good at R&D. So if one of these children takes part in one of these researches, would there be any problem? I hope our doubts can be allayed. Thank you, Mr. Chen. I have explained just now, if the result is to be used by the governments, then the ITF will be paying for that. If our science advisor thinks that's possible, we can also be an intermediary. But as to whether that government department would really use the results is up to that department. If there is a product that can be used by both the public sector and the private sector, we are okay with it. but we will only be paying for the public sector part. But how about initially it's not a project tailor-made, and they just do their own R&D, and if they come up with a product that's suitable for your use, how would you do that? Our rule now is that it has to originate from an ITF funding. And we can also be a matchmaker. We can introduce a government department to them. We have helped the Hong Kong Post. We have helped other government departments to do that. So initially, if they are a member of the ITF, that would be okay. As long as it is ITF funded, then it's okay. And you talked about fairness and justice. You don't have to worry, Mr. Chen. It's not only about a person. We have different areas. We have biotechnology, we have ICT. We have different assessment panels. And the chairman is the science advisor. And if it's biotechnology, is our head of biotechnology. So we have representatives from the government, from the private sector, and from the academia. And also we would ask heads of engineering departments of different universities to help. In our enclosures, you can see the list of our different subgroups. They are all outstanding professionals. Of course, declaration of interest is important. If a member of the assessment panel is somehow related to the applicants, then of course we will be particularly careful. How about if he's the son of the CE? Well, anyone has to make that declaration. Well, these are mainly senior personnel from universities. So this has been a time-honored system. Next, Mr. Tan Ka-Piu. Thank you. I would like to ask about the operation of the ITF, and I would like to make some suggestions. Now, for the committee, there are 8 subgroups. They are very professional subgroups. Can there be a 9th subgroup? Well, Hong Kong is an aging society, and that leads to a number of problems. Now, how can technology and design help so that the elderly can lead a better life? They may be frail, they may be crippled. So how can they be more integrated into society? I remember Mr. Chen Yik-hei, he was very concerned about the hiking needs of his grandfather. So how can we encourage designers and technicians to help people, in particular people who are suffering from senile dementia? Can we come up with some new communication devices? I think we really need to rely on technology so that accessibility issues can be addressed. I think some R&D results can be used in this way, but can you set up a subgroup to look into this so that society can face this problem more squarely? And also in the course of R&D, will you look into this possibility? Other than doing R&D in Hong Kong, can the manufacturing process be also carried out in Hong Kong? If you want to attract more talents to come to Hong Kong, I have looked at the recent example in Singapore. For certain group of people, they can enjoy tax incentives. For example, professionals in the mediation and litigation sector. Well, of course, elderly is a very important issue in our society. In our report, there is section on this issue. We are in close liaison with the Labor and Welfare Bureau, and in March we will be making a briefing at the Elderly Commission, and we will be talking about the technological support for the elderly population. Now we are doing some researches. In the report, we have mentioned that now we are cooperating with the Tonghua Group of Hospitals, and there's a new product that is a vest with RFID, and maybe GPS device can also be attached to the vest, so that in the future the senile dementia patients can be tracked. But we have to have a vest that can be washed 100 times. So we are also cooperating with the garment sector. We have different subgroups, and I do not rule out the possibility of adding more subgroups. As for retaining manufacturing in Hong Kong, now we are looking into it. That is, how can high technology manufacturing be retained in Hong Kong? Our science park is trying to look at that. Well, some manufacturers are now thinking about that because it's now much more expensive to have their manufacturing facilities on the mainland. Mr. Wong? Under the ITF, we have a trainee system. Other than supporting our R&D, we are now providing resources for 2 trainee positions in each project, and we will be paying for 2 years' wages for that trainee. We hope that we can retain R&D talents in Hong Kong. Each year we have about 300 trainees like this in Hong Kong. Mr. Ben Chang, I strongly support the injection of funds into the ITF. I was in the IT industry and I understand their work, but I have several questions. First of all, for the 5 R&D centers, they started in 2006 and now they're still running, and we are told by the paper that they are running smoothly. However, when we look at the international trend, we know that now people really we know that the development of Chinese medicine and biotechnology are really popular, and Japan has been injecting a lot of funds into these areas, and Korea is doing very well. And Korea even claims that acupuncture was invented by them. So I think for Chinese medicine, a lot of R&D can be done. So will you consider setting up the 6th R&D center so that more resources can be put into the R&D of Chinese medicine? I hope we can really do it, and we do not get empty promises. The FS has announced that funds will be put into development of creative industry, etc. So how about the R&D on Chinese medicine? I hope it's not just hot air from the government. Well, we attach a lot of importance to Chinese medicine. And for my commission, we have a joint committee on Chinese medicine R&D, and we have also done a lot of work with the support of ITF. A number of universities has joined hands to carry out studies, and we have provided a lot of support for the development of both software and hardware in this area. I think you are concerned about GMP. The government has also stated that in the long run, GMP should be in place more properly. And we would like to thank the Commerce and Industry Bureau's support. And also the Jockey Club has given us some funding. At the Chinese University's Biotechnology Center, we have put together a new contract manufacturing arrangement, and the sum is quite handsome. And Dr. Gou's bureau also has a Chinese medicine committee under it. Now, as to whether we will add another R&D center, I think we have to be very careful about that. If the existing mechanism runs smoothly, I think we can keep that, because if we want to build another R&D center, that would cost a lot of money. So for Chinese medicine, it will be one of our focuses in the future. Now people are living longer and longer, so I'm sure that we will be putting more effort in that area. Mr. Ben Chan, any follow-up? Yes. I would like to thank the Commissioner for her answer. You saying that you have put in a lot of resources in the area of Chinese medicine. However, for Astri, I think now they are just looking at one small part of Chinese medicine, but we understand that for Chinese medicine, it covers a huge scope. So the industry is still not sure whether you can really help them. The industry is actually facing a lot of scientific problems which cannot be resolved by themselves alone. Now you are getting $5 billion, so I hope that some of it can be spent in this area so that the industry can be helped. Well, you talked about that. It's very technical. And Mr. Chen, if you think that there are certain areas in Chinese medicine that you want us to look into, please let us know, because our cooperation with the Biotechnology Center is a long-term one. Dr. Elizabeth Court, I would like to declare my interest. I am a member of a assessment panel of the Innovation and Technology Committee, and I welcome the injection of funds into the ITF. However, I would like to reflect some of the industry's views. Some of them are applying for support for patents. So how much do we have to spend on a patent application nowadays? You're now providing them with $150,000 to $250,000, but still for SMEs, they are still having a hard time. So can you provide them with more funding? And the ITF has also supported a number of trial schemes concerning commercialization of R&D results. But I think that's not enough. Can the ITF do more so that more products can enjoy the assistance of the government, and so that such products can really be commercialized? As for R&D centers, some of our other members have mentioned that. Well, we have talked about the elderly, Chinese medicine, biotechnology. Actually, all of them can be classified as medical technology. Now we have an epidemic and there's a shortage of vaccines. And also our society is facing the problem of aging. So we really need a lot of R&D in the medical area. So can all this be grouped together so that an R&D center on medical technology can be developed. I think this would truly help the development of Hong Kong, and the ITF would be used more appropriately. As for patents, I think we have been quite generous. We have conducted a market survey. We can give you some figures later. As for elderly and healthcare, I'm sure that will also be one of our focuses in the future. As for the pilot schemes, well, for the 15-year review, we have done this. That is, now we have given more funds to this area, and if in the future we find that it's insufficient, then we will make it better.
議員嘅提問，就住專利申請嗰度咧，我哋而家嘅創新科技基金所有嘅研發。
All the R&D projects provide for the possibility of patent application. With the support of the CIP panel, we have increased the funding level from 200,000 to 150,000, and that's another subsidy for patent application. And the amount has increased from $150,000 to $250,000. That was based on a survey, and that is for the funding recipients. Among the funding recipients, 80% of local applications can be completed with a funding of $200,000. That's a lot depends on the complexity of individual applications, but that would cover applications to one or two agencies, for example, US or EU patent organizations. With increased funding support, it would make it easier for patent applicants. I want to follow up the question on patent application. Do you allow one application for each R&D project? And the funding level is up to $250,000. But according to some research teams, they may want to apply for more than one patent. Do you just support one, or do you allow them to apply for more than one patent? Mr. Chang? The funding code is to provide support for one application, but the vetting committee also has the discretion to approve more than one patent. For example, two applications, and each would receive up to $250,000. But we have to be fair. We don't want to spend too much money on patent application vis-a-vis R&D proper. Wong Kok Heng is not here. He has accused us of getting in the way. 2 years ago, in the Audit Commission's report, it's just February, we were criticized to be a worthless organization. Mr. Wong Kok Heng should have known better. He said the R&D support program involves assessment after 6 months after the project has been completed. According to the Audit Commission's investigation, 25 projects by the R&D centers, it's found that 15 were not assessed. That's staggering. And then for 12 projects, some did not achieve anything in terms of technological breakthrough, and only 2 were adopted by the industry. So for 25 projects, 2 were adopted by the industry, 13 were not assessed. So do you think that Professor Casey Chan is stupid? And the Audit Commission was not right in pointing that out. I just don't know how you can account for this. The Audit Commission noted that since 2004, apart from the midterm review in 2005 concerning 5 and in an assessment covering another 5 R&D centers, the IT Commission has never looked into the weight of the R&D projects and whether it's influential. So the fund has been set up for 14 years, and you have not done your job. I don't know whether you have been wronged by the Audit Commission, and Mr. Wong Kok-heng is not here. You haven't answered these questions. Look at your expenditure from 2007 to 2011, 2012, $1.4 billion on all these things. It's a rough calculation by me. Of course, you need to get money, but you have done no assessment. Do you agree with the figures arrived at by the Audit Commission? 0708, 152 million to 0809, 171 million, 0910, $398 million. Well, they kept the expenditure kept rising. Was it because of inflation? You are not doing a better job. Quite the contrary is true. The expenditure kept going up. Professor Chen, if they are listed, would you buy their shares? Of course not. But of course, to the pro-establishment members, the money is not theirs. It's other people's money. They don't care. And a long hair criticized it and was getting in the way. You need to change your plans in 2015. And why do you need to get funding in February 2015? I've never been in the technology sector, unlike Mr. Chen Bang. I'm a low-tech person. I look at figures only. Are you going to do business like this, Dr. N. Zhang? Do you want to allow some time for replies? If you are doing things that you won't do if you are in business, but if someone is sick, you are not saying that he should get treatment in 10 years' time, or the operation should be deferred. I have many questions. Just get prepared. It's a messy organization. The administrative cost is so high. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, thank you, Chairman. The IT fund dish out funding support for 4,200 projects over the years. How many of these projects have been turned into commercial applications? And how many items which have been so commercially applied have their production base in Hong Kong? And for such R&D efforts through commercial application, how much economic benefit has been derived in terms of GDP contribution? And some members also want you to do this or that in certain R&D centers, or even set up new centers. I want to ask whether in terms of the scope of R&D projects, do you only cover what's being carried out in the R&D centers? Can someone from in a university apply for funding support from you? So can these people apply for funding support for their R&D projects? How many of them were rejected? How many of the applications were rejected? We have 5 R&D centers, and under each we have an assessment panel. For example, it's a clothing. Apart from the 5 R&D centers, the IT Commission also involved universities in 2 exercises in January and July. The universities can apply for support for their R&D projects. If the scope of R&D proposed is very new to Hong Kong, especially in terms of biotechnology, we would ask overseas experts to do the assessment. So basically, we accept all kinds of application. How do you decide whether the applications should be approved? So would you approve the application after the assessment by overseas experts? If the IT Commission does not have the expertise or local expertise is not available, then we'll ask overseas experts to assess the application, and then Hong Kong, we will make a decision in Hong Kong whether it should be approved. So ultimately, for these items, were they approved? We have a scoring scheme. We will approve an application if the score is over 50. 20% will be for the scientific element, 20% on the technical approach and capability. We are very straightforward. As long as they get the necessary score, it will be approved. Looking at our statistics, about 30% of the applications have been approved. Of course, there may be fluctuations over time, but overall speaking, the average successful rate is 30%. What about commercial applications? I'll ask the Deputy Commissioner to say something about that. Thank you, Mr. Wu, for your question. Actually, the Commission attaches importance to this issue as well. Even if we can achieve innovation, sometimes it's difficult to turn the result into commercial applications. Commercialization would involve not just the technology. The technology must be viable, but there's also the other factors such as market and also the entrepreneurial considerations. So under the IT fund, we support the R&D efforts, and as the Commissioner has said, we also provide support for commercialization in terms of training. Last year, the ITF launched a program to encourage R&D researchers in universities and to develop startups. Starting from last year, we have been providing $4 million to each and every universities involved in such R&D projects, so that the students and the teachers can turn their R&D results into commercial applications. We need to support commercialization to bridge the gap between R&D and application. So we would like to get member support for the $5 billion injection into the fund. Please wait for the next term. You have exceeded your time. Dr. Kwokake, I've listened for a long time. It seems to be a case of we need $5 billion, although we have not been able to do the things we were supposed to do, and the audit commission said we could not do our job properly. But that's not the right attitude. That's not the right attitude in terms of responsibility or accountability. A question has not been answered. You have supported 4,000 odd projects. How much have resulted in commercial applications? No figures has been provided. You just say it's difficult. And what about production? If a project cannot be commercially applied and it doesn't really benefit the market in Hong Kong, then that runs counter to the objective of setting up the ITF. And we are not talking about just a short period of time. It's been 15 years since 2000, the year 2000. And I don't see any new approaches proposed in the paper that you are going to do more commercial applications, or the manufacturing industries can benefit from something tangible. You're just asking us that you'll be doing a better job in the future. Well, in that case, there's no need for our scrutiny. You haven't responded to the Audit Commission's recommendations and observations. You provide so much support, and still it's very difficult to go for commercial applications. Then either the arrangement is problematic, or the subsidy that you provided to corporations or enterprises is not good enough. I've heard that it would be best to get funding support from the IT fund for losing propositions, and they would keep the lucrative ones to themselves. It may be just speculative. So can you tell us how you can do more commercial applications and how you can prevent abuse? We're not talking about a small sum of money. It's $5 billion. Thank you, Dr. Kwok. We admit, we do recognize that we don't have many commercial applications. But commercial applications is a long and drawn-out process. In the past, the mechanism that would not offer support to that stage since 2000 up to 2009, what we require would be just a report. As for since the introduction of pilot schemes and the expansion of the scope of the IT fund, we have been looking at integration of different technology, clinical tests, and systemic tests. We believe that the improved mechanism would be a cause for optimism, because a commercial application will be easier. As I said earlier in this meeting, there was a project by CUHK, a test based on embryonic fluid. That it was supported by the IT fund more than 10 years ago. So commercial application may sometimes take a long time to realize. We believe a better result can be expected in the future. As regards the audit report, we respect all the findings, and we work very hard to implement the recommendations. And we have been providing the regular progress reports to the CI panel and the Audit Commission. Dr. Kwok, so you're saying that the mechanism will be better, but what about 2009? Since 2009, how many how many cases of commercial applications have been achieved, and what's the contribution to our market. Well, we are talking about a patent, a license. Commercial applications cover a wide range. We have a number of schemes to tell us that the R&D has been beneficial. We have different schemes for universities and SMEs, and the industry will enjoy the IP rights in the applications. From 2011 to 2013, 2014, in the 3 years, we have 66, 52, and 43 cases. And they account for 25% of the total number of projects. So they will own the IP rights. And whether the applications can be really marketed, a lot would depend on the economic situation and market conditions. But we know that such R&D results have been adopted by the industry. From 2006 to 2013, 2014, among the 700 projects, 300 licenses have been granted. So it shows that the applications have been adopted. Last year, we launched a new program to promote commercial applications further.
That is to expand the public sector trial scheme to increase the amount of subsidy and also relax the requirements under the innovation scheme. Next, Mr. Tony Tse. Thank you. Well, first of all, I support the injection. But of course, with the injection, I hope that more support will be given to the industry so that more can be done when it comes to commercial application. And I have 2 questions to ask the administration to get more information. Paragraph 5b. It says that all the R&D centers have met their latest target level of industry contribution of 20%. I would like to know, compared to other countries, how do we compare with other countries? And this 20%, is it on the high side, on the low side, or what? Have you taken into account the target level? Can it be further enhanced? What is the future target? If we can do more, it will be better. And then C, it says that under the public sector trial scheme, a total of 70 projects has been approved. How much money is involved? And I don't know whether these projects have finished with that trial. How many of them will be actually used? Will the government help these projects so that it will be widely used in the community? Thank you. The 20%, to a certain extent, shows the recognition of the sector. It started from 0, and about 4 to 5 years ago it was about 4 to 5%, and it's further increased, and now it's 20%. We will look into whether it will increase further. In June, we will report to the CNI panel about our report. For every $100 spent on R&D, $20 comes from the sector, whether they want the R&D, whether the IP, whether they will get the IP in the end, IPR in the end. The ITF is not a business. We've engaged in some facilitating devices for elderly people, devices to enhance safety, etc. About the 70 projects under the trial scheme, I would defer to Professor Yu. Professor, thank you. Well, for the construction industry, there is an R&D center working very closely with this sector. Say, for example, new technology is used to monitor the safety of workers in construction sites. And there is another. There is an information building management system, and this is also to enhance effectiveness. It's been tested at different sites. The response is good, and hopefully in the future there can be commercial application. Thank you. Next, Mr. Charles Smock. Thank you. I support the injection. As we know, there are a lot of R&D centers, academics and SMEs rely on the fund. There is an important point. This is an investment for the future. It's not a business. On Tuesday, a group of academics met with lawmakers to explain to them about the fund. Some lawmakers attended and indicated support of the injection. And they have talked about some areas of improvement. At the same time, they pointed out that an important point of the fund is to retain talent. We can argue about whether this fund is good. Of course, there is always room for improvement. And at the same time, what we see is that graduates, undergraduates, and doctorate students, after they've been trained, they leave. So more can be done using the fund. This fund is not a business. If you see this as a business, then you will be disappointed because it's a business that loses. And a lot of people seeing it this way will just go back to, say, banking and real estate. And some people mention about working for the good of other people. Well, what I'm concerned is that we will lose everything, including the people we have trained. Some members mention about more commercial applications so that people will see how good, what good it serves. I agree with that. A few days ago, Professor Tim Wu of the Hong Kong UST is working on an application to help students with hearing impairment to enunciate. Well, there may be projects that are difficult to understand, but at least what we can do is to let more people know. Some members said that we have spent a lot of money on it. Of course, I would like value for money, and some people talk about the cash rebate scheme is increased by 10% to 30% and is a lot of money. But someone from the academic told me that is not enough, because compared to other places with a tax incentive, we are not attractive enough. So it's not a matter of whether we have wasted a lot of money. We have to look at the intangible benefit. And a lot of private enterprises put in too little in R&D. I hope members will understand, or maybe spend a little more time to try to understand that the culture in Hong Kong about R&D is different. It's seen as a business, but it's not. Another criticism is that you spend a lot of money on R&D and the money is not used for business development and marketing. And it shows that there is a problem because commercial application is not successful, not because money is not enough, because it's spent in the wrong areas. And it shows that there are still room for improvement for the operation of the fund. I don't expect the Commissioner to answer every single one of my questions because you already know that these areas need reform. A lot of academics said that it takes too long for the application processing. If you have to wait for half a year or a year or a few years, then investors will withdraw because they don't want to wait for too long, and the Audit Commission criticized you for it. Next, Mr. Felix Chung. I support the fund. Let me give members some examples because I heard from upstairs that members doubt the commercial application of the fund. Well, there is an R&D for textile and apparel. It started in 2006 and a number of projects has been commercialized, and it is worth a lot of money, and it's been promoted to overseas buyers as well. Well, the suit won by the rowing team in the Asian game is now being sold overseas. I think the team won one of the first three places. We understand that when it comes to commercial application, we can't just rely on the government, but if we can attract multinational corporations, then it's a big step forward. It may be the first product that was developed in Hong Kong and sold all over the world. So don't think that none of the projects are successful. You have to consider sustainability, Commissioner. Yes, it may not be successful in the first round of the application, and in the second round, and you may not be able to get the fund because they think you've made a mess of it. So so if you don't get funding in the second round, your team will leave. You have to change the mechanism. And it's not open for application too frequent. You will have to wait for the next round, and you don't even know whether you'll be successful. And your team will have to make a living, and so they will have to turn elsewhere. and you have to improve in this area. Commissioner, thank you. Well, there are 2 rounds of applications. Strictly speaking, it won't take 6 months because out of the 6, 2 months is for application submission. So it's 4 months when it comes to processing. Yes, it's not good to ask the applicant to form a new team in the second round. We have a special arrangement. Normally, the research will last for 2 years, and in the 18th month, if they have deliverables, they can make an early application. So they will have a grace period of 6 months so that the team will not leave. And if the first trial is unsuccessful, well, they wouldn't be frustrated because we have changed our system. If it's not successful, then the reasons for rejection mostly is something to do with the budget. We'll tell them, and we encourage them to resubmit an application. We try to make the application to the fund more friendly. Well, Mr. Chung asked us to improve on it, and we've been doing it. And you see that we've been doing so in the past few years, and we will continue. After today, we hope that the enterprise support scheme will be good enough, and if it's not, we will endeavor to improve. May I remind members that you just stick to one language. Don't use a cocktail language. Mr. Yu. Thank you. About continuity. A few years ago, I think it was the OGCIO, a sum of money was given to the tourism industry to develop some software for small and medium-sized travel agencies to use. It was only about $1 million, and the money ran out after the first stage of development. The sector found the application not very good, and they stopped using it. And I've spoken to your office. We both agree that more should be done. Maybe more money should be put into it. It's quite a complicated software because it involves immigration and different activities. Well, perhaps you can buy some software. Some companies are using very good softwares, but they're not willing to share. Is there some kind of mechanism for you to buy the software from them and then through university research improve it for small and medium-sized companies to use it? This will save money and time because we don't have to get a team to start from scratch. Will you consider this because it will be an improvement? As long as the software company is willing to sell it, and we will make everything clear because the university may change the software. Under the current system, is allowed to buy as an existing software instead of spending time to develop one from scratch. And when we talk about the public sector trial scheme, well, apart from government departments, public bodies, chambers of commerce are included as well. If we have this service software or platform, if the chambers of commerce are supportive and say that they will use it, of course, we will go ahead. So there is a reform. In this report, yes, that is the case. I think it is subsidized in full at the beginning of last year. There were different, it was endorsed by the CNIP. If the Tourism's Chamber of Commerce supported it, yes, it will be done. Dr. Fernando Zhang, 3 minutes. Well, this fund has been put in place for over 10 years, has used $9 billion and 4,200 projects. I know it's very difficult to calculate how much money is made. We think this logic is quite ridiculous. I teach in a university and I don't agree with this idea.
According to your report or your review reports, we have seen some successful cases, and I think it's worth promoting them. For example, some of them are related to healthcare care. For example, there is an integrated urine wetting test system. Now, for people who have to be bedridden for a long time, this will help the nurses to detect the urination condition of patients, and the well-being of the patients can be improved. I don't know how many patients you have helped already, and there is also another CU research that is by testing blood, they can know whether a baby is suffering from Down syndrome. I think this is great. However, the fee is not inexpensive. You have to pay $10,000 or so for such a test. So for your products, I think some of them can reap good profits. For example, the Down syndrome test is quite expensive. Now we are spending so much public money on this. So for the successful cases, if they make money, can they also return some money to you? For example, for the small entrepreneur research assistance program, you can get only 7% of the money back. Now Hong Kong taxpayers are footing the bill. So if these projects eventually make money, can they pay back to society to help the needy? As for repayment, it's related to the Small Entrepreneur Research Assistance Program. When a company makes money, and if there's a third-party fund injection, then the company would have to pay the government back in stages. The review report has reported on this, and actually not many companies would pay back, and it's very difficult for the government to chase them. So because maybe they are not just getting money from the ITF, they are also getting other fundings as well. We just have limited manpower. It's very difficult for us to monitor so many cases. The INT industry has told us while we are supporting them, we should be happy to see them successful. However, now when they are successful, they are under the pressure of paying us back. So we have had lengthy discussions. We also had discussions at a CNI panel. And now for the Small Entrepreneur Research Assistance Program, we will be replacing it in stages by an enterprise assistance program. The advantage of the new program is that the company does not have to pay back because the money involved is not of a huge amount anyway. So we have a mission. We should be happy to see success by the companies, and these companies will be making money and they will be paying taxes. So we will be launching an enterprise assistance program in March or April. We have discussed this more than once at the CNI panel. Members have given us a lot of valuable views and we have taken them on board. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wei, second round, 3 minutes. I'm sorry, Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, second round, 3 minutes. Chairman. Just now, Dr. Fernando Cheung talked about percentages. As for the audit report, it says that up to the 31st of May 2013, it's about 2 years ago, the government has only gotten back $22.8 million. It's only 7% of the funding granted, which is $334 million. Now, of course, the pro-establishment camp is very happy. Now, let me ask you, pro-establishment camp, if you do business, if you make an investment and then you only get 7% return, would you be happy? And the commissioner says that, well, it's because we have limited manpower, so that's why we cannot monitor all the cases. Well, why don't you employ more people? Because now you are losing $300 million. If it's not for Wong Kok Heng, I think we would not be talking about this. Now he's having a drink with C.Y. Leung. So, and I would also like to ask Leung Sing, you are in the banking business. Would you be doing a business if the rate of return is just 7%? If somebody asked you for money and would not return you the money, would you give the money to him? But now our ITC keeps on giving these companies money. I think we should go to the ICAC. Well, why you tell me this? How come you do not flush? Who would do this in the world? I haven't counted all your mistakes yet. How much money are you trying to get from us now? Do you know? $5 billion. And you can buy 50 super luxury houses with this kind of money. Some people say that I am an obstacle in your way, but now you are squandering money and you cannot monitor the companies. You just tell us that you do not have enough manpower. Well, for American pilots, their life's worth nothing, but the fighters they are flying worth a lot. It's not the pilots' lives that are precious, it's the plane. Now you're telling me that you do not have enough manpower, so that's why you cannot look into all those cases. Mr. Leung Sing, 5 minutes. Mr. Leung Kwok-hong is now Mr. Leung Sing's time. Do you want me to talk with you outside? Well, for Leung Kwok-hong, people's lives are not precious. Fighters are more valuable. Now, for audit reports, I have taken part in the discussions at the PAC meetings, and I have seen the performances of many departments. They have made a lot of mistakes in the course of delivering their work. They need to make improvements all the time. And as for the members here, while you do your business, while you discharge your duties, I'm sure there is still a lot of room for improvements. Now, if you keep on talking about old audit reports, there will not be an end. So while we are PAC members, we will follow up on the progress of the improvements of each department. So if you're interested, you can join PAC. Don't always talk about old reports, and don't waste time asking government officials these old questions. Well, of course, the departments would face all kinds of problems all the time. And don't you point your finger at Wong Kwok Heng, who has done his homework. Everybody knows we cannot do all our homework. If you can do all your homework, I will commend you. Please look into yourself. When you look at this project, it's impossible to get all the money back. We are the Finance Committee. Yes, we should be talking about money. However, it is impossible to get all the money back because we are talking about social impact here. I think you shouldn't be wasting time talking about all this. Now, if you get personal, if you do not look at the issue itself, then you will be suspicious of everything, and eventually you're wasting our time, and you are indeed in the way of our passing the funding proposals. It's very easy to be a member of the opposition party. Whenever the government suggests something, you just ask numerous questions, you come up with all sorts of weird scenarios. Well, if the government official knows the answer, then he is a fairy. He's not a human being. So, Mr. Mlang Sing, please focus on the discussion. But he has been asking weird questions. Well, would somebody's relative be involved in this kind of projects? Well, this has nothing to do with funding. I have been sitting here for hours. I think for the Finance Committee, we should be looking at government fundings. If you are dissatisfied, you can vote against it and just tell us why. If you support it, then vote for it. If you don't, then vote against it. And you are accusing other people of not doing their homework. And how much homework have you done? As legislators, we shouldn't be full of hot air. I think even Mr. Charles Mock wants this to be passed as soon as possible. And many members of the industry would welcome this, and SMEs would also welcome this. And then if we are more focused on our discussions, then I'm sure everything will go smoothly. I haven't attended the CE's luncheon, but I've heard many voices. Some people really want us to pass these funding proposals as soon as possible. The schools want their fundings, etc. Third round. Mr. Lam Kwok Hong, 2 minutes. I've heard Mr. Mlang Sing. I think it's really impressive. When you were the chairman, you were not properly doing your job. And now you're pointing your finger at Jimmy Chung. Well, you like to vote so much. When we talk about Rule 37, why did you accuse us of filibustering? We just work in accordance with the FC procedures. You just want to point a finger at the others. How about yourself? Why don't you do some soul searching? Whenever there's a chance for voting on paragraph 37A, it would be vetoed. You know that. Well, ever since July 1999, you've been getting funding from us, and up to the end of June 2013, you only had 2.2 billion left. And now 2 years later, you just have $200 million left, and you have lost another 2 billion. Well, which company would be like this? Just now, I asked Mr. Leung Sing, he's in the banking business. Well, if a company performs like this, would anybody lend you money and there's no collateral? And if you tell people that I get a lot of money from my grandpa and I pay you back in due course, would anybody believe you? Well, you are all businessmen. I have never done any business. Would you do business like that? Mr. Leung Kok-hong, you are just repeating what you said earlier. But we are gatekeepers. You are not raising any questions. Okay, now I'll ask a simple question. Oh, your time is up. Dr. Fernando Cheung, third round, 2 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Well, time is getting shorter. But I think Mr. Leung Sing is ridiculous. He said that, well, for the audit reports, they would be discussed at the PAC meetings, and that's it. Other members should not quote the audit reports, and they should not discuss about the audit reports at other meetings. What kind of logic is that? Dr. Fernando Cheung, please focus on this item. What you said wasn't what Mr. Leung Sing said. I just derived from his logic. That was not his logic, so please be more focused. Chairman, please give me back my time. Just now, the Commissioner hasn't answered this question. Now, for this project, actually, they are very good. Some of the R&D outcomes can really help people. And some of them can be successfully commercialized. But I don't see that they are helping Hong Kong people. If you can afford the product, yes, they can be helpful. However, they were subsidized with public money. So now there are outcomes. So can there be rules in place so that Hong Kong people can enjoy such outcomes? Now let's not talk about repayment. Money may not be that important. However, such outcomes may really have a positive impact on our society. Can you put down this kind of rules? Commissioner? As for serving Hong Kong people, actually we are doing that. For the elderly and patients, we have been providing rehabilitation devices to local institutions and hospitals. Well, if these institutions are willing to use their products, I think the companies would be very happy because they want to be more well known. I would like to follow up on commercialization. The audit report was delivered a while ago, and when we talked about the establishment of the Innovation and Technology Bureau, Mr. Greg So talked to me, and he said that the government hasn't done enough in terms of the commercialization of R&D outcomes, and they would try to make improvements. So I would like to ask the Commissioner this. Do you have concrete measures in place now so that the commercialization of R&D outcomes would be charged at a certain or consistent level? Now, if we have a product, do you think it can help revive the manufacturing industry in Hong Kong? Do you need to manufacture prototypes so that people would know the products better. Last time I talked about the technique of weaving. If we have a new weaving technique, can we apply it in manufacturing so that manufacturing in Hong Kong can be revived and more jobs can be created? We don't just want to create jobs in the area of design and R&D. We can also have factory jobs. We really encourage the R&D outcomes to be used in real life. Ms. Sitho, as for weaving, as the government is not involved in weaving, so that the public sector cannot make use of this R&D outcome. But the ITF would support the R&D sector, and now they can already make prototypes.
And even if the product is not needed by the government, we'll ask private organizations to try to use them. We will do this through chambers of commerce, so that we won't be accused of bias. We'll find R&D centers, and I will ask the assistant director to supplement on the policy of these centers. The IT Commission has a general guide on IP rights when it comes to commercial applications. Rely on the board of individual R&D centers and input from the relevant sector in coming up with the detailed rules. We would be as generous and as possible. For example, in the textile industry, the royalties charged for such R&D applications are very low, from tens of thousands of dollars to just over 100,000. The member was referring to a special weaving techniques. Actually, the research started in the PolyU. In the second and the third stage, they cooperated with the textile center. Although the corporation's manufacturing base is in the Pearl River Delta, but the company is a Hong Kong company. Well, when it comes to choice of production location, they have to consider their own circumstances. Understand that we are not a planned economy. What the government can do is to offer assistance. Well, you should open up your land policy to attract the return of manufacturing industry so that you can tie in with the initiative to train designers. Please let Ms. Sitho finish her question. I'll queue up for the second round now. If this is just one last first sentence, please finish it. I hope the government would relax its land policy so the traditional manufacturing industries can return, and together with high-end technology, that we can promote job creation in Hong Kong. Otherwise, I would think that resources will be wasted in the promotion of innovation and technology. Commissioner, we have heard from the industry that we should try to supplement high-tech with a traditional manufacturing technology. We would have a 10-minute break. Let's return by 5:25, 5:30.